So when I was first approached about writing a book, I was hesitant because I work in digital media, and so the half-life of stuff online is 6, 12 hours, and certainly obsolete by the end of the day. And so the prospect of writing something that's going to take months and months to write, to correct, and then eventually publish and wait for it to come out was very, like, distant from what I'm used to doing, but ultimately decided to do it anyway, and I'm glad I did. And so I'm very excited for you all to read my book about the case for voting for Joe Biden.
Here it is.
Chapter 1, age is not an issue in this election.
So did you watch some of the press conference today?
I did.
This is Lincoln's going, "Oy," listening to that thing. So you have over now 3 million subscribers on YouTube.
Yeah.
So tell us how you started on YouTube?
So I moved out to LA to act, and so I guess this is my failed actor story. And I initially started working, I was acting or trying to act, which mostly amounted to going out for commercials for Cars.com and Doritos. And I worked at a gym. I worked at the front desk of Equinox.
Can I interrupt you right away?
Yeah.
You told me today that you were lactose intolerant.
I was. If you want to understand the desperation of an actor in Los Angeles, I actually went to a commercial audition for some cheese product. It was like Cheetos or something, and they'll ask you if you go in if you're allergic to anything that you eat, anything that they have. And I remember being there and being like, nope. So
I could just see you doing a milk commercial.
What did we say? There's the line in the commercial audition is if there's nothing that makes a cake go down better than a full glass of milk.
Well, fortunately, you've survived your auditions.
Survived the audition process, and I used to work at Equinox at the front desk in West Hollywood, and I worked at night so that I could read the New York Times, the failing New York Times, and there was no computers there. We were just at a desk, and so I would read that and write articles freehand that I would then go home and type up and submit to HuffPost, and I just loved politics. And the thing about working as an actor or not working as an actor is that you have to wait for a lot of people to give you permission to do whatever you want to do, and you can't do anything until 10 people say yes. And the thing about creating content for yourself is that you don't have to wait for anybody. And so I just decided to make content on my own, and it started in my bedroom. At the foot of my bed, I would just shoot on my camera and wear gym shorts on the bottom and a suit top on the top, and I still do that to this day. And so here we are, and that was 5 or 6 years ago, and now I'm lucky enough to be able to have the platform that I have. But it's kind of a testament to what we're able to do with the creator world now.
Yeah, and you have three
3
plus.
million, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I don't.
But you have an Emmy.
5.
5.
I'd rather have 3 million subscribers. Okay, so Shameless.
Yes.
Where did this all begin? How did this Republican Party? I always try to think of who is the beginning of this.
So there were a lot of ways that I tried to think about this, but I think what 2 Republicans credit, and that's what tonight's going to be. It's about complimenting the Republicans. 2 Republicans credit, they're really good at laying out plans in the beginning that they'll see through to fruition that may take years or decades, and we've seen that play out right now, whether it's Project Red Map, for example, which was in the immediate aftermath of Barack Obama getting elected, and Republicans deciding to gerrymander legislative and congressional districts across the country.
Well, what happened was that we got killed in the 2010 election because we passed the Affordable Care Act.
Yeah.
and we just got wiped out in the midterm. And I think it was less about Obama and it was more about the Affordable Care Act, which people remember. What did Grassley say? They're going to pull the plug on your grandma.
Yeah, that was the death panels, which is ironic because 15 years ago, Republicans were fear-mongering about the prospect of death panels because of the ACA, a law that would give tens of millions of people health care. And now, cut to, with the overturning of Roe and the introduction of Dobbs, if you look at what happened in Texas with that woman, Kate Cox, whose fetus had a fatal genetic condition, and she was granted an exemption for an abortion in the state of Texas. Ken Paxton, the Attorney General, appealed to overturn it, and he was successful, but she had to go in front of judges to decide whether she would be able to get reproductive or seek reproductive care, health care, that may impact her future fertility.
Her fetus was not going to live outside the womb.
And it was judges who decided whether she could do that. So 15 years after fear-mongering about death panels, Republicans introduced
and she had to fly out of the state.
Correct, yeah. So they were very good at seeing through these plans to fruition. But I think really where it started, if I had to nail it down to one person, was Newt Gingrich. And that was who really introduced the acrimony in politics today. I mean, you would know this. You lived it, so.
I wrote about it too, and Rush Limbaugh is a big fat idiot, and other observations.
And other observations.
And part of it was, I wrote about Newt in it, and he had this list of words, learn to talk like Newt. And there were words like traitor, to describe Democrats, sick, perverse, liar, cheater, you know.
It's like Donald Trump's biography.
Yeah, I mean, he really was a toxic guy, and he, I think, started it.
And that was the beginning of the government no longer functioning in any way that would actually be conducive to passing legislation, but rather just focusing on destroying one party for the sole sake of consolidating power for the other party and for Republicans. Because after that, there was no more incentive structure for Republicans to even work together for Democrats, because if they did that, it would reflect well enough on the Democrats. And so instead, they just sought to destroy the Democratic Party to the political benefit of themselves.
And another guy who I think of when I think of where this all began is Ailes.
So, looks like we got some fans. So Roger Ailes worked for Richard Nixon and created the Ailes memo that would ultimately become the foundation for what Fox News is today. And by 1974, when Nixon resigned because of Watergate, basically figured that he would create Fox News, which would happen about 22 years later in 1996. And so what happened to Richard Nixon would never happen again to a Republican president. And the natural conclusion of that, really like the culmination of those efforts, is you have a Republican president in Donald Trump who objectively did something 10 times worse in inciting an insurrection and preventing the peaceful transfer of power in this country. And far from being forced to be held accountable, far from being excommunicated from his own party, he had his party rally behind him with the help of a Republican media, conservative media ecosystem that was so willing to shill for him, so willing to lie for him, that they had to pay $787 million to be able to do it. And that shows
$787 million.
Yeah, shows the extent to which that wasn't enough. Well, it may be more, because I think there's the Smartmatic lawsuit that's pending right now, too.
Yeah, Smartmatic is the software.
The voting
goes
systems.
in the voting machines.
Yeah. So that is this is really Roger Ailes' plan seen through to its logical conclusion. This is what we expected from that memo, and that's what Fox News and the right-wing media ecosystem have become.
So why the title Shameless?
Well, I cover Republicans on a daily basis. The main thing is, look, we're heading toward another election cycle where already we're seeing in polling how Republicans are benefiting in polling as the party that does better on the economy, the party that does better on the Constitution, the party that's better for families. And I'm looking at this stuff, and they benefit so much from their historical branding as the party of the Constitution, the party of family values, the party of fiscal responsibility and states' rights and law and order and the military and law enforcement. And their actions don't comport with any of this branding, but still they benefit from it. And in large part, the media helps them perpetuate this whole farce. And so I wanted to focus on exposing that to kind of, because if you drill an inch below the surface, you'll expose that branding, that none of that branding is actually deserved. When you look at, for example, I mean, they call themselves the party of family values, and they are led by a guy who right now is awaiting sentencing for 34 criminal counts, convictions for a situation where he paid out a porn star for an affair he had while his wife was at home with their infant son. That's the party of family values. This is a party that calls itself the party of...
Allegedly, he had an affair. We need to be very careful here.
This is a party that calls itself...
I mean, who are you going to trust? Okay, never mind. I take your point.
Yeah. A party that calls itself fiscally responsible, and yet they added $7.8 trillion to the debt. A party that brands itself the party of states' rights, and yet they all validated the Texas lawsuit that sought to overturn the election results in 4 other states because they didn't like the results. The party of the Constitution, and yet this was the party that prevented the peaceful transfer of power for the first time in over 200 years in this country.
Speaking of which, I have a quote from Ronald Reagan here. Oh my goodness. Well, come on.
Hang on. I think he's in the room right now, so we want to pay him a little bit of respect.
Okay. This is it's in the book, Shameless, and it's a part of a quote from one of Reagan's inaugural addresses. I'm not sure which one it is. In the eyes of many in the world, this every 4-year ceremony that we accept as normal is nothing less than a miracle. And yet, Trump leads this insurrection. And how this isn't the #1 issue in this race, but he's managed to, because of what you were talking about, the media imbalance, the right-wing media, that 87% of Trump supporters believe the election was stolen.
Yeah, and look, you know, I take a lot of issue with the mainstream media in the book because part of it is because I don't think that they are meeting the moment that they're in right now. But another big part of it is the fact that there's an imbalance, and I don't necessarily know whether it's the fault of the mainstream media for not properly rebutting all of the disinformation that comes from the right, or it's just the fact that there's a foundational imbalance in our entire media ecosystem. That when you look at Fox and Newsmax and OAN and Steve Bannon and Alex Jones, Daily Wire, Daily Caller, all of these outlets are basically avowed partisan arms of the Republican Party. And yet on the left, we don't, you know, you look at ABC and CNN, CBS, NBC, not only are they not the liberal media, not only are they part of the Democratic Party, but they bend over backwards to prove that they're not liberal. And that's why we have 69 cover stories in the New York Times in the lead up to the 2016 election about Hillary's emails. And yet, when you look at Ivanka Trump having done the same exact thing.
Those are front page stories.
Front page stories.
You say that in the book.
I do. And
Shameless. I'm going to be shameless about it if you're not.
I'll tell you what, that was one unintended byproduct of me having to plug my book that is called Shameless, and I learned very quickly the irony of what I was doing. But make sure you buy it.
You should be proud. You should not be ashamed at all of
That's right.
hawking your book. That's what you do. That's why we're here.
So you look at that, and there were 69 cover stories about Hillary Clinton, and yet when Ivanka Trump did the same thing during the Trump era and used a personal email address for government business, came and went like a fart in a hurricane. And so that shows that asymmetry at play in the media.
All these people who contributed to the book, you have, well, some incredible list of people.
Yeah, it was Al Franken was one of them.
Well,
Who
I actually contributed.
who won a Grammy
and
and an Emmy.
I won 2 Grammys.
God.
Well, anyway, so all these people who contributed to the book, and I'm one of them, and
Al Franken,
I contributed the title to a chapter.
Yes, and that chapter is it's the chapter about democratic messaging, and the joke is, and I don't know.
All our bumper stickers end with "continued on next bumper sticker."
That's right. So I thought a good example of that. Can you talk about the ACA rollout, the Obamacare rollout, and the messaging surrounding that?
Okay, it was a 3-legged stool. That's kind of what I remember. And I think, okay, one of one good leg was that you could not be turned down for having a pre-existing condition. But another leg was that you had to get health insurance. You had to have some health insurance. You didn't have to be through the Affordable Care Act. I mean, it didn't have to be on the exchange, but you had to have health insurance. And if you didn't, you had to pay a fine. And so that was part of our messaging. And
nice and pithy.
It took that long to do 2.
Yeah, just like Drain the Swamp. Rolls right off the tongue, you know?
Right, yeah. You have to pay a fine.
Yeah, so while Democrats were digging into the intricacies of Medicare Part D and trying to explain away the fine that you're going to have to pay if you don't pay the individual mandate, Republicans just said, well, these are death panels, and so they won out. And so for so long,
pull the plug on grandma.
Or they're going to pull the plug on grandma, yeah.
Yeah.
And so for so long, Republicans have been so much better at Democrats at messaging. And you look at what Donald Trump did, for example, and to his credit, I mean, he was very good at short, repetitive, potent messages. And that's why we hear build the wall and drain the swamp and lock her up and make America great again over and over and over until it's just seared into our frontal cortexes and you hear it in your sleep. But he did that, and knowing how effective it was. And I think for the first time that I can remember, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but you let me know if this is the same for you, but for the first time that I can remember, Democrats are finally learning messages, effective messaging that could very well be the playbook of what Republicans use, and that is that we're seeing from Kamala Harris messages like, we're not going back, messages like, when we fight, we win. Tim Walz coming out and saying, mind your damn business as a message. And it's effective for the first time.
Well, you know, he's from Minnesota.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how plain spoken.
He's
true. Actually from Nebraska.
Yeah, that's right.
He grew up in Nebraska, but
these messages are compelling and resonant and strong and relatable and sticky, basically. And I think that's the lesson that we needed to have learned. Yeah.
Yeah. We used to have these. I was telling you, we'd have these retreats, the Democrats in the Senate, and there'd be a 3-day retreat over a weekend, and we'd go on Friday and come back on Sunday, and Schumer always had them on messaging. We'd always do messaging, and one year we had these 2 brothers who wrote a book called Made to Stick. And so the first, they gave a presentation after dinner on the first night, and I went up to them, I'm really looking forward to hearing about your book. What's the title of it? And they said, Made to Stick. And I said, make it stick? And they went, no, Made to Stick. I go, oh, okay, Made to Stick. So they gave their presentation, and after it was over, I went up to them. I said, that was that was really good. I really love your make it stick. I said, no, made to stick. You know, right. The next morning, they were on a panel that we were going to have during breakfast. And so I said, I'm really looking forward to your for this panel today, and you're going to talk more about your book. What was the name of it again? And they said, Made to Stick. And I went, oh, yes, that's what it is, Made to Stick. Okay. So they gave their presentation, and I went up to him afterwards, and I said, that was great. Really, I can't wait to get Make It Stick. And he said, no, it's Made to Stick. I went, oh, of course, Made to Stick. Got it, Made to Stick. So later that day, I came down the elevator, and they were in the lobby, and I said, I just tried to buy your book, but I couldn't buy it. I went on Amazon. They went, it's on Amazon. So I said, no, I put in Make It Stick. And I must have done this to them like 10 times during the weekend.
Yeah.
But they were really good at messaging, these guys. So, this is a Bannon thing, Steve Bannon. Flooding the zone with shit.
Yeah. This is...
Sorry to use, but that is a technique of, he coined this. And what is the point of flooding the zone with shit?
I think it's pretty pernicious because it's not just lying. It's kind of obliterating the very concept of truth. I think with somebody like Donald Trump, Republicans know that they can't make his hands look clean, but they can try to make other people's hands look dirty, and so they will completely flood the zone with misinformation and disinformation. And I think the point is to make sure that people don't know what's real, what's fake, what's truth, and what's fiction, and creating an environment like that which undermines trust in every institution, every media outlet, every journalist, every reporter, and creating so much instability and chaos kind of creates an environment where demagogues thrive, and that's what Donald Trump is. And so it was this whole like foundational strategy to just make sure that Americans didn't know what was real and what wasn't, knowing full well that the person who would exploit that like lack of understanding or lack of knowledge about where we are is somebody like Donald Trump. And so it was this whole coordinated strategy, this like vertically integrated strategy with Trump at the top and with Steve Bannon and his acolytes working below him to just kind of destroy our entire information system. And that's where we are right now.
Remember the first day of the Trump administration, his press secretary, Sean Spicer, came out and said that actually his convention or his impeachment, his impeachment crowd. No,
his
inauguration crowd was bigger than Obama's.
Yeah.
And the next day, Kellyanne Conway was on Meet the Press, and she said, there's going to be this thing called alternative facts. And alternative facts were just really
lies.
Well, they were basically flooding the zone with shit.
Yeah.
So that you just don't know what anything is. People give up on knowing what the truth is.
Yeah. And that's the environment that we're in right now. When people don't know who to trust, and you have somebody like Donald Trump who is relentless with injecting his lies into the political ecosystem, into the zeitgeist, basically. Eventually, people are going to become susceptible to it. And that kind of leads itself back to the whole point of this book, which is you have Republicans claiming that they are one thing over and over and over, that they're good on family values, and yet right now, Republicans are in the Senate blocking a bill for IVF. That is how people build families. And so you're claiming that you're the party of family values while you're blocking people's ability to build them, which is to say nothing of the legislation of blocking SNAP benefits, which feed families, blocking Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, which keep families alive and fed, and so.
Once Bernie was Sanders. He was the ranking member on the Budget Committee, and he came to lunch and he said, okay, they want to cut food stamps. What kind of religion wants to cut food stamps? And I said, the Southern Baptist. And only Harry laughed. Only Harry. That's how much fun it was.
What did you tell me? I've asked you this before. When you first got into the Senate, how worried were you about your comedy background undermining your ability to be taken seriously?
Well, at first, everyone was, when's he going to be funny? When's he going to be funny? And I just was determined not to. And then I accidentally told a joke in Sotomayor's confirmation hearings. It was, I said she had become a prosecutor and she said from watching Perry Mason. So I asked her, I said, why did you become a prosecutor watching a show where the prosecutor lost every case? And that wasn't my joke. She said, I just said that was an amusing observation. So she said, well, actually, Perry Mason lost one case. And I went, okay, well, let's move on because I have this amount of time, so I'm going to ask you. So then at the end of my 30-minute questioning, I had about a minute and a half left, not time to develop another thing. I said, okay, what was the one case that Perry Mason lost? And she said, I don't know. And I said, didn't the administration prepare you? Which I just said. Okay, and then it comes out, it was like, Franken can't help but be funny. So you were talking about how the messaging that's coming out of the Harris-Walz campaign is actually pretty good.
Yeah, and I think that's hopefully a lesson that Democrats can kind of learn moving forward. I mean, I think they have been, I think they have learned that lesson from the past, and so.
But I just, isn't it? I mean, how amazing has this election cycle been in the last 6 weeks or so?
6 weeks, yeah.
Oof.
I think what's especially telling about that is that now, in the face of this new type of messaging by Democrats, where it is these short, punchy messages, now you have Trump stuff. I mean, he doesn't know how to iterate, and so.
Did you watch the press conference today?
I was actually streaming the press conference like an hour ago. Yeah. So, yeah, I watched the whole thing. Donald Trump's job right now is he's watching himself fall in the polls. He's watching Kamala Harris and Tim Walz's ascendant campaign. He's watching them raise more money, sign up more volunteers, gain more support, garner more donations, get more poll workers, and his only job is to be able to reach out, is to broaden his coalition, to expand his tent. That's his only job right now. And so he called this press conference today, and I shit you not, he brought up birds and windmills. That was a part of the speech. And his only job is to bring people in. And I'm just trying to think. I'm just trying to think if there's people out there right now who've been on the fence up until what's today? Middle of August? August 15th. August 15th of an election year. They've been on the fence all this time, and they're like, that's what I've been waiting for. That's what I need.
It's also not true. But I mean, but you know what the number one killer of birds is? Buildings. Birds fly into buildings.
Well, if only the Republican nominee for president had some relationship with buildings. You know?
Okay, we have some questions here. Okay, yes, I want to ask you about. Well, maybe we'll end with this. Like, what some of because you've had a number of people who helped contribute to your book.
Yeah.
You're saying I was one of them.
Pete Buttigieg, Jamie Raskin, Heather Cox Richardson, Jen Psaki, Mark Elias, and Dan Pfeiffer, Mehdi Hassan. That is,
And this is from interviews that they did with you.
For the book, yeah. And these are people I do a show with Mark Elias. I do a show with Jamie Raskin. I'll tell you what, I was, the most nervous I ever was before my interview with President Biden. And I was sitting in the White House and I was like, just get through the first question. Don't stumble on the first question and then you'll be fine. But when you're sitting in the White House and the president is about to walk in and he walks in, you are at the center of the universe. It is a tornado and you're right in the middle of it. And so I was like, just get through this question. So that I was nervous, my heart was pounding. The second most nervous was asking Jamie Raskin to write the foreword for the book. And because I knew the second that I signed the book deal, I knew that I wanted him to write the foreword. And I waited a long time to ask him because I was worried that if he said no, I didn't want to have to sit with it for too long. and so I was like, well, in my life, if I can just get 2 or 3 months later, that's 2 or 3 months of my life that I'll have to deal with the fact that Jamie Raskin has said no. And so I asked him late in the process, which he loved because he had less time to write a foreword. So.
It's a nice foreword. Okay, there's some questions from the audience, and we're gonna you want approval of these, or you want me to?
No, good. Go for it.
Okay. What can be done to ameliorate the generational divide within the Democratic Party?
Oh, perhaps not nominating someone who is 78 years old for starters. I mean, it's too
82.
Is he? Oh my gosh, he's 82. That's right.
Yeah. The other guy is 78.
The other guy is 78. Yeah. I actually got confused because now the 78 years old is the oldest guy in the race. Look, I think it's important to, first of all, I mean,
he's
honestly,
the oldest nominee who's
oldest
ever
nominee
run.
in history, and that is something we've been conditioned to know, thanks to Donald Trump himself, conditioned to focus on. It is to make sure that we elect, younger people. But I think right now is just to focus on the issues that impact young people the most. Before, elections were largely a function of issues that impacted older people. It was taxes and healthcare. And now it's climate change, which is inherently going to have a bigger impact on younger people than older people. It's reproductive rights, which are inherently going to have a bigger impact on younger people than older people. It's gun safety, which is inherently going to have an impact on younger people rather than older people. And so to bring those issues to the forefront, that these elections should be more focused on by young people as opposed to old people. They have a bigger stake in everything that happens. And to Democrats' credit, they are focusing on these issues. They're making them a forefront of the campaigns.
I think there's been a shift. I mean, I think that's part of the shift that we've seen, post Biden getting out.
Yeah. Well, you were telling me how excited you were that, you called me and you were like, it's Brat Summer, let's fucking go. That's what you said. And I was like, Al, I don't know what you're talking about. I watched C-SPAN all day, and you were like, Charlie XCX.
I still don't understand how so many people can still like Trump. As a presidential candidate, can you please explain? Go ahead. It's your.
I think that sometimes people like being lied to.
Oh, great. We only have 20 more questions.
Look, the real answer is that we have a completely bifurcated media ecosystem where if you get your news from a right-wing media source, it is in a hermetically sealed bubble. And so even if we're having the strongest economy like the one we're in right now, where we have the most jobs added in American history and the lowest unemployment rate in 50 years and the strongest jobs numbers that we've ever had and the highest stock market that we've ever had, because these people are being told in a hermetically sealed bubble that is right-wing media and Fox, OAN, Newsmax, and Steve Bannon's show that the economy is terrible, that's what people are going to believe. And so if Donald Trump is the person that these people put on a pedestal, then they're going to think that he's something that he's not. And it doesn't matter if he goes in and uses his political capital not to help people based on the populist campaign that he ran, but rather to just help himself and use all of that political capital to pass a tax cut for billionaires and millionaires, because these people won't know it. They won't hear it. And so I don't really necessarily fault people who've been manipulated by him. And I think that it's kind of our job to do what we can to break through to people and not just scorn them. Although some
well, that's some people's job, is to scorn people. They're called comedians. Okay, here's one. Is our judicial system broken? Well, it is at the top. I mean, there's no question about those guys.
It is at the top. Some modicum of hope that I can take out of this is that, in the aftermath of the 2020 election, when they brought forward 65 court cases claiming fraud, they lost all of them on the basis of fraud. And so the court system largely held up. The judicial system largely held up. And so I know there's a lot of worry moving forward that Republicans are installing election certification officials who are already election deniers. There was that Rolling Stone piece that said that there are already 70 election deniers in place across the country where they've either delayed certification before or have espoused pro-Trump, election denialism sentiment on social media on their Facebook pages.
Aren't they trying to get the first level of people able to certify?
Correct. And if they go to the county election, the county board members, then they can prevent certification moving forward. They just have to stop one step in the process. But again, and I've spoken with Mark Elias about this exact issue.
Now, explain who Mark is.
Mark is the nation's premier voting rights attorney, Democratic attorney, fights, basically litigated. Yeah, you should clap for him.
He did my recount.
Yeah. And he was the person who litigated all of the post-election claims in 2020, and he'll do it again in 2024. But the judiciary largely held up. Even the Supreme Court held up when they tried to bring that case forward, where they tried to undermine the election results, the Texas lawsuit seeking to undermine the election results in 4 other states. So that is some morsel of hope, but
yeah, that was this Supreme Court that turned that down, and it made me think, hey, they're not so bad. Okay. What are your thoughts on Trump lawsuits and lies during the Harris-Trump debate? Was that right? They haven't had a debate. Oh, in September.
The Trump-Harris debate in September. What's the question about it?
Oh, insults. I thought that was lawsuits. Okay. What are your thoughts on Trump's insults and lies during the Harris-Trump debate in September? Well, they haven't happened yet.
I think it's a pretty good prediction, though. Look, we've seen. First of all, this is the strategy that he's using right now, and he's sinking in the polls. So he's, I'm of the mind right now to kind of let him talk, let him keep sinking himself if he wants to. We saw him be a creep in a debate already when he had that moment when he was stalking Hillary Clinton in the 2016 debates, and I know a lot of people are wondering, like, why didn't Hillary Clinton just turn around when he was like looming behind her? And I just think that he may very well try the exact same thing to Kamala Harris, but the difference is, I don't think she's gonna let that shit fly. And so, in a way,
you also think that in debate prep, they're going to go like, okay, he might come stalking you behind you. Do something. And she goes, I know I'm gonna fucking do something.
But it's true. And so in a way, knowing that he can do that, I mean, Hillary Clinton did lay a kind of blueprint for Kamala Harris to be able to follow. So I guess the expression would be that in a way, literally and figuratively, Hillary Clinton walked so that Kamala Harris could run. So.
Okay, that's a bumper sticker. Okay. Can you read this one?
Let's see.
I can't read it. People, when you write a question, just pay attention to your handwriting.
No.
Okay.
That's okay.
Okay, yeah. I still don't understand how so many people can still like Trump.
Oh yeah, we already got that. Yeah.
Okay. This is. I want to. He says bye and then his name, but I don't want to say your name in case it's stupid as some of these things. Why is it with everything we have seen, January 6th, Project 2025, etc., what people still think of play off the dangers of, here, can you finish that?
Why is it with everything we have seen, January 6th, Project 2025, etc., that people still think or play off the dangers of a second presidency of Trump? Too much drinking of the Trump juice. There's a.
Well, I'm glad you figured it out.
Imagery. I think because.
Well, we're a divided country, and so this is going to be. But he seems to be at 46.
The ceiling seems to be at 46. I don't know why people refuse to take it seriously. I think that's just a problem that we have consistently, is where we don't believe. We have no schema for a lot of the things that happen, a lot of the bad stuff that can happen in this country, because we've always just had everything that we have. We have all of our freedoms, and they've never gone backwards. And so we have no schema for what it would look like for anything to get rolled back, or for democracy to actually get weaker instead of stronger. And so people just don't take it seriously because we don't even know what that would look like. We've never had anything like that happen before in this country.
Now, Trump has the ceiling at 46, which means that third-party votes are the only way he gets elected. I think people, they're not going to vote for Jill Stein this time. You know, and Robert Kennedy Jr., for some reason, has gone down.
So, right nearby.
Yes.
Right nearby, I think RFK Jr.
He dumped the bear not far from here.
I guess, was he on his way to the airport? Was that what it was? When I'm on my way to the airport, and I pass roadkill, I don't know what number on the list it is to stop the car and pick it up on the way to the airport.
Well, he was actually, he had been falconing. When he saw the bear, so he was not in New York yet. So then he was going to skin the bear, as one does, and then use the meat. He was going to eat the meat, but he realized after he had put the bear in the trunk of his car, I guess that's where it was, he realized that he had dinner plans.
Followed by a flight.
Followed by a flight.
Followed by a flight.
So he had to go to Peter Luger's or someplace and have dinner, so he had to get rid of the bear.
My favorite part is that he thought telling this story would help him. get out ahead of it. And the smug confidence in his expression when he said, now try to make hay of that New York Daily, whatever it was, Daily News or something.
Yeah.
Daily News was like, oh, guess we don't have to run that story. wouldn't want to hurt RFK Jr.
What can we do about dangerous Trump supporters like Elon Musk? Well, Musk was going to give him, what, $40 million a month, but then didn't. Or a week or something.
I think like $45 million a month, and then backed out, or at least publicly backed out. Who knows what he's giving? I mean, he's turned all of Twitter into basically a right-wing megaphone for Trump. Look, this is more of the same. This is what Republicans do. They collect billionaires to fund their campaigns, and that's why the sole legislative accomplishment of Trump when he was in office was a tax cut for millionaires and billionaires. And in fact, he dangled the prospect of a middle-class tax cut, but only if Republicans were able to keep the House and the Senate. And yet he pretends that he passed some tax cut for the working class, but why would you need to say that you are going to pass a middle-class tax cut if you already did? So he kind of unintentionally admitted that it was just a tax cut intended for the ultra-wealthy, and of course he would end up losing the House and the Senate in midterms.
But now he wants to win it back, and so anyway. Natasha from Long Island. This is fine. This is nice. From Long Island asks, do you have a social life?
No.
Yes, you do. Do you make time for mental health?
No.
Okay.
I mean, honestly, probably not no. That is the honest answer.
Right.
But I intend to. And I'm just staking all of that on Kamala Harris winning in November. And then maybe...
there you go.
And if not, I'm going to look back at this moment where my mental health is already in tatters and be nostalgic for right now. And that's scary for me.
Will the Harris campaign hire you to write some zingers for her? Oh, that's for me.
I almost felt a moment of like, well, that is so nice.
No, that's exactly how campaigns work. Let's hire, I would volunteer to write jokes, but that's not going to happen. So, I mean, they're not going to. Who? Okay. You have an independent Republican best friend.
I do. Do I?
I think this is also from Natasha. Huh? Okay. Okay. Well, this is for you. This is a good question for you. How do you suggest we correct the asymmetry between the liberal and conservative media?
That's a good question.
Isn't it?
I wrote a book about it. I think the goal here is, one, to embrace the kind of messaging that Democrats are embracing right now. And so they've got that set. But then to correct the asymmetry, we just need to build up progressive media. We have no antidote to what Republicans do on the right. And again, we look to the mainstream media to do it, but CNN doesn't want to do it. ABC and CBS and NBC don't want it, and they keep telling us that they don't want it by virtue of how they act and how they cover Donald Trump and the way that they allow the right to game the refs in this country and the way that they equate everything that Donald Trump does with feeling like they need to bring a Democrat into the fold too, because they can never just focus on him without also engaging in both sides coverage and pretending that Democrats are just as bad. And so Donald Trump will incite an insurrection, and if a Democrat misplaces a modifier, then they'll do that kind of coverage. But I think what we have to do is build up a progressive media ecosystem, and this way we have some antidote to what Republicans are doing. And that really is the only way.
And you did that, and you contributed to that.
Yeah. I mean, and
in
you
a
do
big
too.
way.
You have your podcast as well, and we have, this media ecosystem is growing, and we have Crooked Media, for example, which has been a large part of my diet. We have lots of YouTubers, David Pakman, Midas Touch, and so I think supporting this ecosystem and helping it grow, and making sure that more people. The goal of what I do, I think, is not even necessarily just to reach people and have the people I reach be my end audience. That's just, I think, the beginning of the process. I think my goal really is not just to educate people who watch the videos, because presumably if you're watching my videos, you're already interested in politics, you're already somewhat informed about what's going on, and presumably already going to go and vote. It really is to arm people with information to then go out to their circles of people and act as tribunes kind of for the message. Because if you're watching in August or earlier than that, then you're kind of you're one of this small circle of political freaks, and we put ourselves through this. But there are people in everybody's lives who don't pay attention to this stuff, and we all have people in our families who are completely disaffected, who don't think that voting matters at all, who are susceptible to misinformation and disinformation. Maybe somebody just turned 18 or 19 or 20, and they're able to vote for the first time. The goal is to watch the videos and to consume this stuff so that you have the information that you need to reach those people. And that's going to be the difference in these elections. And I talk a lot about this one example in Wisconsin. And Wisconsin's often known as the tipping point state in our elections. 50-50 state. And the difference in 2020 between a Biden win and a Trump win was 2 votes per precinct. So if Trump was able to flip 2 single votes per precinct, he'd have flipped the tipping point state in 2020. And so if that doesn't kind of underscore the extent to which individual people have a lot of agency in these elections, and also why Republicans try so hard to make sure that people can't vote, I don't think anything will. And so use the messages you get, not to just know that, okay, you're better informed, but really to understand them to the extent that you can find 1 or 2 people and make them your responsibility in this next election.
Well, these people... These people here tonight are obviously already engaged and are looking forward to the book. But what can they do? What I tell people is we know where New York is going to go. But there are other states that are close to New York. And there are...
You all need to go vote in Pennsylvania.
Now, that's exactly what we don't say. You're joking.
Joking.
You're joking.
Yes.
I won an election by 312 votes, so you don't make those kind of jokes. But you can go to Pennsylvania and volunteer and knock on doors, and you can go to New Hampshire, maybe, or the 2nd District in Maine.
True. And also, donations early help Democrats both open field offices. Right now, there's a huge disparity in field offices. I think Kamala Harris has 36 field offices open in either Pennsylvania or Georgia, one of those states, compared to Republicans, to Donald Trump's 3. In Nevada, I think Kamala Harris has something like 12 to Donald Trump's 1. And so I don't know necessarily where all of Trump's money is going, but I know Alina Habba has really nice bags.
One could argue that Ralph Nader gave us Bush 2. He did. Jill Stein gave us Trump. So what do we each do, you see? And then I can't read it.
Let me see.
About R.F. Kennedy Jr. Well, he's helping us.
Let him talk, I think, at this point. Let him keep talking.
There are anti-vaxxers that might vote for him, so we should encourage.
At this point, after the Trump campaign spent so much time validating and legitimizing RFK Jr.'s candidacy, there is some shred of poetic justice in politics that the party he's taking more support from right now is the Republicans.
Yeah. Well, because there is that anti-vax crowd.
It's the anti-vax and just general, gonna vote for a guy who would skin a bear before a flight. I don't know if there's a big crossover between like the Elizabeth Warren voter and the guy who picks up the bear on the highway to skin it.
There's expensive polling we can do to find that out. Okay, well that's, wait a minute, I think we just finished the questions because I don't want to read, is our judicial system broken again? Which, our judiciary.
Yeah, well, I think,
How about the Supreme Court?
I think actually with the Supreme Court, it's a great way, in terms of messaging, it's a great way to kind of refocus people's attention. When Joe Biden was running and there was so little support for Biden, I think what was the one thing that I found some potency with was reminding people that this election wasn't necessarily an election for or against Joe Biden. That's giving him too much credit in all of this.
It was about giving Trump the power to
nominate the next 2 Supreme Court justices.
Yeah.
And it still is a potent messaging point, but I think, to her credit, Kamala Harris has been really effective right now in terms of garnering support unto herself. And so you don't feel like we need that crutch of saying, okay, well, don't worry about the Democratic nominee because you're not really voting for the Democratic nominee, you're just voting based on the Supreme Court. And that remains true, but now people are also excited about voting for the Democratic nominee, which is great, and now there's some sense of hope in politics, which is weird as a Democrat to feel. It's been a long time.
You know that if Harris wins, that fucking Alito and Thomas will they're gonna hang on.
They're gonna just weekend at Bernie's.
Yeah.
They'll be ice cold, propped up, rigor mortis set in. They're fine. They're fine. Keep walking.
Now, unfortunately, no, I won't go there.
Yep. Well, I think
Bader Ginsburg could have been iced for just 2 months.
Just 2 months.
For 2 months.
Yeah. And that was our bad.
Yeah.
Honestly, that was our bad for not getting a little bit more creative with the solutions.
Yeah. Well, this has been great.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you all for coming.